Hi. So this is great. I'm really happy to be here and proud to be with other wonderful writers. And when people, I think like a few years ago, people used to say there should be kind of a little literary scene in Marin. There's a lot of writers in Marin, but there's no scene in Marin. And now I just tell people that this is it. You know, it's why there are words. And Peg has basically created what has become this, where writers hang out. And we don't just go when we read, we tend to go when our friends read or when people we don't know read, because it's such a great series and you're bound to meet someone who you've heard about and hear them read and get knocked out. And then we go to Smitty's across the street. Well, we shouldn't tell them. But we get our dive beer cravings satisfied. But it's become something I look forward to, and I've formed some friendships through it. And I really owe this. We owe it to Peg, for all the organization and the spirit and heart and creativity she puts into it. So, thank you, Peg. So, my wine down. This is tilted. So I won't kick it. So I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to read the very end of my book, which you're not supposed to do. I guess you can't do it really with a novel. But I've read a little bit. This is Story of the Women. It's the last story in the collection, and I usually read the beginning of it because it's long and readings. And so I thought this time I'll just read the end. So I do have to set it up a little bit and tell you that the story takes place in New York City, and there's a young man whose mother has died of cancer, and his father, about a week later, goes to a party, and the son watches his father have 10 women sort of surrounding his father at this party, and his father, who is a very devoted husband, loving husband, starts sleeping with lots of the women who've come to heal his broken heart. And the son is having a less successful time with it. He sort of hears a strange buzzing in his ear, and he's irritated with his father, and there's a lot of tension. And then the other thing you should know, he has a friend, Jonas, who he hangs out, who's trying to sort of help him out. And Jonas has a friend who he's told about the narrator Andrew's situation, and she has expressed an interest in Andrew. And she says she told Jonas that she cried for Andrew, and that irritated Andrew. So this is the end of the story. Over that weekend, Jonas took me to a Rites of Spring party on Spring Street in Deering. We rode the subway down and walked there through a late March blizzard. The cars moved soundlessly down the street. From somewhere in the heavens, a snowball scraped the top of Jonas's head. "Took you fucking long enough," a woman's voice yelled. She was leaning out the window of a fourth-floor apartment. "Took us forever to shovel out the driveway," Jonas yelled back. The party was packed with downtown hipsters, most about 5 years older than us, and something already to show for their lives. In what passed as a dining room, the snowball hurler, Sylvie, was arranging the hors d'oeuvre platters and mixing margaritas. "You're Andrew," she said when I walked by the food table. The crier, I thought. She handed me a margarita, then tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She was nearly my height, pale and possibly sleep-deprived, with an oval face, soft features, and dark brown librarian glasses. When we shook hands, hers was damp from the snow or from squeezing limes. After a minute or two of introductory conversation, she said, "I'm really sorry about your mother." "Thanks," I said. Someone called her name, and she excused herself and went to hug a woman in a short skirt and knee-high boots who introduced her to a white guy with thick dreadlocks. When she returned, she said, "I don't know if Jonas told you, but I went through something similar when I was in high school." I was starting to understand that having someone close to you die meant hearing everyone else's saddest story. "You lost your mother?" I said. "Father, listen, you probably don't want to talk about this at a party." "Maybe not," I said, and so we talked about where she went to school and my job at the radio station. She was studying art history at Columbia. She told me all about her roommate, Dana, whom Jonas had slept with once, zero chemistry, and then she asked me about how my father was coping. Sort of as an experiment, or because I had a buzz on, I decided to tell her the abridged saga of my winter, about the perfumed notes and late-night calls, how I felt sometimes like a dormitory RA, how I'd bump into a t-shirted woman in the kitchen, half asleep, how one of them made elaborate snacks in the middle of the night, and how another, the boutique owner, accidentally walked naked into my room thinking it was my father's. "Oh, please. You think she went there by accident?" Sylvia said. "I guess I did." Sweetheart. When my father died, my mother kept me away from the men she was dating. We were side by side and our arms brushed, my body tensed. I was 16, and I think she thought I'd try to seduce them. And I probably would have in my own insecure way. Not literally, but enough to ruin things for her. In any event, she stayed over at their apartments. At first it was only on the weekends, but then it was like 4 nights a week. She'd phone to tell me to order a pizza for me and my brother, or Chinese food, whatever we wanted, and to charge it to her American Express card. She poured me another margarita, then poured herself one. I could have stayed out in clubs all night or had huge-ass parties, and she would have never known. I tried it once, throwing a party, but I ended up getting too nervous about all the people there getting drunk and throwing up, so I kicked them all out. Did she remarry? Yes, to my stepfather. Do you like him? Better than her. Seriously? Let's just say he's a lot less complicated. I find everything about my father's dating depressing, I said. Depressing is when he dates a 20-year-old. He hasn't done that yet. And count your blessings, she said. I watched her after that. She was unabashed in a way that usually put me off, but in her there was something heartfelt that I latched onto. She disappeared for a half hour or so, then reappeared at my side. Feel like getting out of here, she said. You mean the two of us? You think you could do better? She said. I tilted my head in mock judgment. She was kind of gawky, I thought, with narrow hips and long skinny arms and an illegible word written on the back of her wrist. Her hair held the shape of a wool cap she must have worn at the party, but she didn't seem to care. All right, let's go, I said. It was Sylvia's idea to stop by our house. She wanted to meet my father, quote, in the flesh, and see if he was as dashing as she imagined. When we reached home, his girlfriend Linda was camped in the kitchen making a pot of coffee. Your dad went to tell the doorman to turn up the heat, she said. She wore a cashmere V-neck sweater of my father's over a white camisole and looked like a late-career Jane Fonda. It's freezing in here, don't you think? I'm Sylvie, Sylvie said. She took off her ski cap and shook out her hair, sprinkling melting snow into the room and onto her glasses, which she removed and placed in her coat pocket. And I'm Linda, Andrew's dad's girlfriend, Linda said. She pulled out 3 mugs, one that I hadn't seen before with the Statue of Liberty drinking coffee. She poured us cups and told us about her evening coaching a room of Bensonhurst kids about writing resumes. My father buzzed the intercom from downstairs and said he'd be up in 10 minutes. When he wants things done, he goes out and gets things done, Linda said, smiling. I could have told her that was inaccurate, that when my father wanted things done, he convinced others to do them for him, but I figured she'd learn that soon enough. It's supposed to get down to single digits by morning, Linda said. Are you two in for the night? I pretended not to grasp what she was suggesting, but Sylvie said, no, we just came by to warm up. When my father came in and saw that I was with a young woman, he grinned widely. Welcome to spring, he said. He asked Sylvie a series of questions about herself, listened with interest to her answers, and then showed her the view. There was something both wistful and very tender in the way he treated us. We walked uptown along the park. I didn't know where we were headed, only that Sylvie appeared to have a plan. We sat on a bench on the path at 81st Street and sipped from a pint bottle of Knob Creek we bought at the corner liquor store, assessing the few passers-by who braved the weather. A young guy, 2 or 3 years older than me, hobbled across on crutches. He's faking, Sylvie said. Grab one of his crutches. What would I do with just one? You could sell it back to him, she said, or you could beat him with it. We traveled into the benches near the band shell where Sylvie said she used to roller skate. I used to ride my skateboard over to watch people like her, I said. I was the one in the hot pants, she said. Really? I think I kissed you once. We were at the center of Central Park in the middle of the night. I thought, this is what unbalanced people do. Snow dropped down on us. My feet felt cold and wet, and I took another slug of whiskey. I was getting drunk. She rested her legs over mine, and I warmed them with my hands. It all felt forced, and then it didn't. As though she'd been working up to the question, she asked me, what's the weirdest thing you can do with your body? I don't understand. I mean, can you do this? She touched her elbows together behind her head. Or this? She bent her hand back so that her fingertips touched the back of her forearm. No, I said, nor would I want to. She looked so distraught that I went ahead and wiggled my left ear, something I hadn't done since grade school. I knew there was greatness in you, she said. At some point, because it was on my mind, I told her about walking in the park with my mother a week after we'd found out she was sick. I'd been away for the summer, and I'd flown back to the city the day before. My mother was critiquing my wardrobe, the holes in my t-shirts and jeans. I'm buying you some pants, she said. Don't be embarrassed. I won't, I said. We went to some stores on Columbus Avenue, and I felt like I was 11. She bought me 4 pairs of pants, 2 pairs of dress socks, 3 shirts, and a navy peacoat. It was as though she were outfitting me for a trip. It was the first time I understood there were a finite number of afternoons we'd have together. 100, 99. The next day, it would be 98. We never talked about the fact that she was dying or what she was heading into. I think we both believed there'd be time, but it all went so quickly. The night I came to her with all the questions and thoughts I'd been saving up, her painkillers had made her so dopey she thought I was taking her to the opera. I actually played Carmen for her, and she said, head pressed into her pillow, that it was unbearably beautiful. She knew that she was sick and in bed, but she thought she was young and in bed with the flu. And she asked me on one of her last days if I could make sure her tennis racket was strung because she'd broken a string the summer before. I took it into a shop, and when they'd finished, I brought it back to show her. When I reached her, the nurse had upped her morphine, and from then on, she was gone. When my story ended, Sylvie closed her eyes. You know, she said, I said everything I wanted to say to my father. And he made his peace with me, but I never played opera for him while he was in bed, she said. It was such a fucking cool thing to do. Outside her building, Sylvie declared, it's been a while since I slept with anyone. I just smiled stupidly. You're quite adorable, she said. Her roommate was away for the weekend. It was a pretty standard grad school apartment, 2 tiny bedrooms, a kitchenette, a narrow hallway, and a sunken living room decorated with a nice plush armchair and a couch that must have come from someone's family. We passed out in our clothes for an hour or 2. Then we slept together with them off. Undressed, she was far sexier than her boyish clothes and awkward eagerness had forecast. And when she pulled me inside her, I felt irrationally as though I might have fallen in love. At around 4 a.m., I woke up sweating and startled from a nightmare. My mother wasn't in this one. My father had died, and I was sorting through his papers and clothes, and I was showing our apartment to a series of realtors. I asked them each, have you seen the view over Central Park? It took some effort to determine that my father was snoring in his bed a dozen blocks away, and my relief at this understanding was so overwhelming I wept uncontrollably. In the morning, I was curious to find myself in a strange apartment and not in my childhood room. I heard car horns and voices outside, a doorman's whistle. I felt tired still, but in a different way, as though I had been drugged. I noticed then what wasn't there, the buzzing. I stumbled over the clock on her desk, 9:34. You can go if you want, she said from the bed. What do you mean? I mean, I sort of trapped you here last night. There was something fragile in her eyes I hadn't seen yet. I'd much rather stay, I said. She smiled and curled into her pillow. Her feet dangled from beneath the covers. I slipped back into bed and drew her to me so that her warm back rested against my chest. I closed my eyes, and in seconds I was out. I slept as I hadn't in years, through that whole snowy day. And when I woke again, it was night. I threw on my pants and padded down the hallway, where I came across her reading a book on the living room sofa, legs curled beneath her. She glanced up at me. It stopped snowing, she said. Shall we go get a bite? Yes, I said. I grabbed the rest of my clothes from the bedroom. We bundled up and headed into the freezing night. On Broadway, I felt the wind rip through my peacoat all the way to my skin, and I was aware then that I had left the first stage of my life and was out in the world in a way I was never before. Thank you.